Yo, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Mostly Low Budget Movie Reviews. I am your host, Clarence. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, to answer the question, I am doing that super big budget movie, but I needed a little bit of time to let that one marinate a little bit before I give you my thoughts on that one. But I still wanted to do another episode today, so I decided to get this movie in. That I'm actually kind of late on by trending standards anyway. This movie was trending number one on Netflix a couple of weeks ago, and it was number 10 earlier this week when I watched it, but yeah, it's kind of fallen off the chart by now. But since it was different, I still wanted to do this one for you guys anyway. Now, I don't do very many fantasy type movies, and this one is called Troll, and it's a foreign movie. It's Norwegian. And now I don't know a whole lot about trolls, and I certainly don't know the Norwegian folklore behind it. This is going to be kind of interesting. So what is this one about? Well, we start out with this young girl, Nora, and her father. They're climbing this mountain, and he's telling her all this, like, troll stuff. Anyway, fast forward 20 years, and she's an adult working as a paleontologist on this project. Meanwhile, there's this construction crew building a tunnel or some kind of road or something, and they use these explosives. And spoiler free, they awaken something, and things go left real quick. Now, the government is informed, and they're trying to figure out what in the world they are dealing with. So they bring Nora in to work on the project, basically, and get her opinions on what's going on and what it might be. And it doesn't take her long to kind of recognize, this isn't just some sort of freak accident, but it's some sort of creature. And that's where I'll stop, because from there she continues to investigate and eventually contacts her father, who she is now kind of estranged from, and she wants to get his thoughts on it. So is there an actual reasonable explanation for this, or was her father right about all those troll stories? So what did the pros think? Well, they came in at a very impressive 88%, but that's only on 25 reviews, and the audience was at a 47% on over 100 reviews on the Rotten scale. So a pretty big gap there. And I'll give you my thoughts before I tell you why there's that big difference. So what did I think? Well, let's start out with the positives. Now, I thought the creature design and the CGI were actually pretty good. These types of movies have a tendency to look cheap, and they actually did a pretty decent job here. You felt the size and scope of this troll. Again, being that I knew nothing about the folklore, that was part of what made it pretty interesting to me, since it provided this origin and reasoning behind, where it came from and what was going on. Now, the overall scope of the story itself, or the origin parts of it, not the scope, but the origin parts of it, was fine. That was okay. Played out in typical fashion, complete with a bit of a cliffhanger in case they do decide to make another one. But that's where my negatives start. Once you get past the whole troll folklore stuff, this is basically King Kong, but with a troll. A misunderstood creature wreaking havoc by no choice of its own. Now, like I said, while the origin is original, I don't think I've seen anything with this telling of a troll story before anyway. The execution of what they did here wasn't really all that original. This also lacked any kind of real high-stakes action to me. I mean, they did a lot of running around and telling us how serious things were, but it just never felt like the troll had much of a chance, really, and it just wasn't enough action to make up for it. While the pros forgave a lot of that and accepted it for what it was, which is rare, they normally like to nitpick stuff. The audience, on the other hand, was the one that was nitpicking everything. The low scores were kind of all over the place, though. And not to get too deep into it, but people didn't like it because there was a Christian element to the folklore where the Christians were the bad guys, and some people said it was, boring. But there was some consistent critiques that I did agree with, like, the King Kong thing, which I mentioned already. Now, the acting, which I didn't talk about, was pretty subpar, which is a little bit surprising since the whole film was pretty well made, and a lot of these foreign movies I watch are, normally the acting's pretty solid. Now, the folklore would have been enough if they focused on the different elements. They mentioned some interesting things, but they never came back to those things again, and they chose to focus on the more basic elements. What would have been more interesting of a story to me if they would have explored the Christian origins and how they became enemies and how they made up these stories to mislead people about the trolls. And it could have provided the trolls some sort of more of a offensive approach to make things a little bit more interesting, a little bit more exciting, and take away some of the weaknesses that they gave the trolls, which, I mean, ultimately, I mean, you just have to wait for one thing to happen and you win. So it really wasn't that big of a deal to me. I mean, there were several ways they could have gone other than just the basic story that they went with. But I don't want to beat this one up too much. Let me bottom line this one for you. Did I enjoy it? And this one's close for me, but I'm going to say no. And put this one right at a 58% on the Rotten scale to stay consistent. All the technical stuff, other than, like I said, some of the acting, all that stuff's fine. They just really fell short on the story for me, since they didn't focus on the more controversial stuff. Maybe they chickened out and didn't want to get into the whole Christian aspect thing. I don't know. All they did was give us a much lesser version of King Kong. And that's a shame, because the setup and everything here was so original. I was hoping they were going to give me something different. But yeah, they just failed on the execution and didn't really stick the landing. But yeah, with that being said, I'm going to close it out right here. If this is your first time, don't make it your last. This has been a Podbean production, mostly low-budget movie reviews with Clarence. And yes, next episode, I will be reviewing the last really huge big budget movie of the year. And when I say big budget, I mean big budget. We're getting into the numbers in the next episode, because I am going to break some of that stuff down, including my official, unbiased, full review of that movie. So I might run a little long on that one. Actually, I know I'm going to run long on that one because I got a lot of thoughts about it now that I'm sitting here. But anyway, I'll be back again real soon. Again, like I said, you already know what the next episode's going to be. So yeah, thank you once again for support, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.